successes and challenges and needs. So we have some range of countries that will be presenting. And then the Secretariat of the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Facility, in the context of the Least Developed Countries Fund, and the Adaptation Fund also, we also provide some reflection on the supports to the LDCs under the financial mechanism in formulating and implementing NAPs in different countries. And of course, we have members of the NAP Technical Working Group, because within the leg we have Technical Working Group. They also try to provide some reflections on our work. We appreciate you all for giving time to be here today for this one-hour event, and we'll make a very good use of this one. So without much ado, I ask that we quickly go to the next agenda item, of which we're going to get statements from the LDC chair, Ms. Magdalene Diouf, at least to provide some priorities and needs, and definitely to welcome us all to this event. Chair, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and good to see you. Dear lecturer, colleague, and friend, it is a great honor for me to be here today. And I would like to thank the lecturer for taking the initiative to hold this event. LDC are a strong advocate of continued momentum, and we believe these events will contribute to this effect. The need for adaptation is already a reality now, and with the projected trajectory of emission that may miss the goal of keeping temperature rise to below 1.5 degree and even a 2-degree world, we will need much more action and support on adaptation. The LDCs view the NAPs as a cornerstone for adaptation in our countries. Our group vision is that every LDC's country should have a fully established NAPs process with a national strong mechanism on capacity building to strengthen the institution using LDC's countries. Realizing this vision will require that all LDCs get immediate support, both financially and technically, to facilitate the national process for NAP and even start working on the implementation. In order to achieve the success of our common objective using the UNFCCC process and bring adaptation at the same level as mitigation, our country needs to develop adaptation plan, but align with the ambition established under the process. The LDC group recognizes that current business as usual approach to climate change have to be rethought, and that we need ambitious global climate response. Current response to climate change are often short-term, sectoral projects working in silo. We need the whole of society response, breaking out of silo, by channel support to a local level, reaching those communities that need it most, with ambitious target and objective to support and finance to reach local level. Regardless of the challenge, many LDC are stepping up effort to raise ambition, submit, update NAP, update NDC, formulate NAPs, and looking for starting implementation of that, and creating an enabling political environment. Much more still needs to be done at the LDC level, because we have LDCs who have different stage of readiness. It is clear that all LDC need to be supported to build on existing experiences arrangements have to be put in place to maintain momentum for transitioning from planning and implementing immediate and short-term action to medium and long need. It is why, for us, LEC is essential to provide the needed support to deliver on our obligation, our need, and requirement under the Convention and the Paris Agreement in order to achieve the vision of all LDCs. This means that, for example, we need to expand the range of technical skill and stronger engagement with the LDC group. Through delivery on NAPS will assist LDC to effectively build resilient society and ecosystem. Technical support should focus on creating sustainable solutions in the LDCs. We appreciate the effort the LEC is playing, coordinating different multilateral funds and support to learn the challenge and gap within LDCs countries. We appreciate the effort of LEC to look how to scale up climate finance in assisting LDCs countries to effectively implement the Paris Agreement and the Convention. We would like to appreciate the proposal writing workshop that has been undertaken thus far by LEC in order to provide support in developing bankable projects within LDCs countries. This has been very welcome by all members of LDCs. So we would like to continue enhancing such initiative. We continue to request to the LEC to enhance its support on how LDCs can better align their NAPS, their NDCs, and their National Development Plan, the formulation and the implementation of the NAPS, and also the monitoring and the evaluation and learning system and process, and also access climate finance at scale. We are committed to doing more than our fair share in the global effort to halve the climate crisis and to adapt to its impact. We can achieve a climate resilient future, and we need to do so because as LDC we have no choice. But only if we work effectively and constructively together in this share and the vote. Before concluding, I will also like to reiterate the important role played by the LDC expert group in advancing both the NAP and the NAP's importance for LDCs. And we're looking really to have the support of the LEC in further advancing adaptation and also ensuring concrete action on adaptation in LDCs countries. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for your kind words, and we hope to maintain the good relationship with your office. And many thanks also for highlighting the needs and priorities of the LDC. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, we'll now go quickly to the next agenda item, and of which we're going to welcome my colleague from the LEG group, which is Mokwena France. He's going to present some key highlights of the LEG supports to the LDC. Mokwena, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor and also for giving me the opportunity to represent or present on behalf of the LEC on the work of the LEC in supporting the least developed countries on adaptation. Good morning, colleagues. Next slide, please. Sometime in February, at the beginning of this year, the LEC sat down to draw up a vision for its work program for the year 2023-2024. And the vision looks at achieving demonstrable results in building adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience and reducing vulnerability to climate change in the LDCs. And this could be achieved by formulation of robust and good quality national adaptation plans and implementation of priorities priority adaptation needs are identified in the NAP with the funding from the GCF and other sources. So this is the vision. The outcome, expected outcome in the long term are all LDCs should have structural, national structures and systems for national adaptation planning process. And we are also expecting that all LDCs will have submitted the NAPs as soon as possible, and those LDCs that already have NAPs should start implementing the priorities coming from the NAPs with the financing support from the GCF and other available funding. The third expected output is that adaptation strategies should be integrated into national development plans. Those are the expected outcomes in the long run. Next slide, please. This is the status of the formulation of national adaptation plans in the LDCs. We can see on the graph that only 19 LDCs have submitted their NAPs, and we have 14 that have draft NAPs, which are not yet finalized. They are in the final stage. 13 of them have NAP formulation in the process. 8 of them, they have not yet initiated the formulation of national adaptation plans. And 3, there is no information available for those 3 countries. The names of the countries are there on the graph. We can see which is at which stage. Next slide, please. The status of the implementation of national adaptation plans by the LDCs as per the LEG 43 reports, the report. Out of 19 LDCs that have submitted their NAPs, 17 of them have prepared and submitted 27 proposals for accessing funding from the GCF. And these proposals are largely dealing with challenges in the agriculture sector, energy, health, and water resources. 18 proposals have been approved for funding for a total of $3.4 billion US dollars, of which around 1 billion is from the GCF and 2.6 is from co-financing. We can see how these projects, the size of these projects, almost 50% or just above 50% of them are small size projects, and followed by medium 22%, large 19%, and macro only 7%. So you can see in the LDCs, the majority of projects are small projects. Next slide, please. Another initiative is the NAP Implementation Pipeline Development Initiative, which the LEG is doing with trying to assist LDCs to come up with concept notes so that they can be submitted to the available funding mechanisms for funding. The initiatives will identify project ideas based on the national adaptation plans, and these ideas will be developed into concept notes together with our partner organizations, and then there will be identification of delivery partners, agencies, and designated authorities, and the presenting project proposals to relevant authorities. That is the team that will have attended the workshops on developing the concept notes. When they go back home, they present such concept notes to the authorities and stakeholders. So far, there have been 3 NAP writing workshops that have been conducted in 2022. And 40 of the 46 LDCs had developed a total of 89 project ideas, of which 3 by the Central African Republic, Ethiopia, and Togo had been successfully developed into concept notes with corresponding request for funding submitted to the GCF, and 3 from Bhutan have been submitted and approved by the LDCF. So this is the, under this initiative, we already have success stories. But there are challenges. Countries are struggling to identify or to secure delivery partners, agencies, even the designated authorities when they go back home in some countries. And some countries, they struggle to get a buy-in from the NDAs when they get home. So these are the challenges associated with this exercise. Next slide, please. Another initiative is the NAP Data Initiative. The LEC had identified that there's a gap in LDCs in terms of climate data, observations, even to developing climate change scenarios which are required for formulation of national adaptation plans. So, but there are existing global and regional data sets, but these data sets are not easily accessible. You need some level of skills for you to interact with such data set, to download and manipulate such data sets. So that capacity is not there in the LDC. So the LEC sat down and developed this initiative where the LDC country doesn't have to worry about the background, the technicality of accessing the data. They just get into the system, and the system will generate the required climate data and climate scenarios for them, and they will proceed in terms of formulating their national adaptation plan. Next slide, please. These are the NAP Technical Working Group, which has 4 subgroups. The first group is the NAP Technical Guidelines. It looks at technical guidelines. The second one is the NAP Implementation Support, which is actually going to develop the guidelines for implementation of national adaptation plans. The third is the NAP Tracking, which actually tracks the process to implement and to formulate and implement national adaptation plans. And then we have the fourth one, which is the multi-stakeholder forum, which looks at the engagement of various other agencies in this work of adaptation. Next slide, please. So the subgroup that is working on the implementation, NAP implementation, is developing the technical guidelines on the implementation of national adaptation plans, which have currently, you can say, 5 steps. The first is to define the overall strategy to develop a national adaptation plan implementation roadmap. And the second one looks at identifying or strengthening institutional arrangements and legal frameworks for implementation, so that when you start implementing, you have required structures and legal frameworks that will assist in the implementation. The third one is mobilizing resources for implementation. We are talking of financial resources, technology, capacity building, which are necessary for implementation of national adaptation plans. The fourth is implementation strategies, policies, projects, and programs. When you have that now, you come up with policies, projects, and programs that you are going to implement. In fact, you will implement them. And the fifth, which is one of the most important, is you monitor the progress and projects, programs, evaluate program, and you also do the learning, the MEL that we normally talk about. Next slide, please. This is the information regarding the NAP Expo 2023. We may all be aware that there was NAP Expo on the 27th to 30th March in Santiago, Chile. At that event, there were about 6 keynote speakers, of which 3 were women. And then we had about 400 participants. 60% of the participants were women. And we had UN and international organizations. You can see from the graph that we are getting a larger percentage of women in our events. So I think this calls for a clap of hands for the leg. Can we clap for the leg for this? The leg is leading on issues of gender. Next slide, please. There is also a collaboration with the RLLS under the Doha Program of Action for the LDCs for the decade 2022-2031. We will recall that, I think it was last month when the program for the least developed countries was renewed in Doha. So the LEG will also be collaborating on this program to assist the LDCs. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the work program of the LEG for the years 2022-2023. Some of the functions of the LEG or activities that the LEG will be doing is to enhancing provision of the direct support to the LDCs, to enable them to submit their first NAP as soon as possible, to also effectively support the LDCs in initiating and submitting project proposals to the GCF and the sources of funding for implementing adaptation priorities associated with the NAPs. These are the things that we have seen in the previous slides. And there are many of them. There are also activities related to collaborating with other organizations, implementing mandates as given by the SBI and the COP and the CMA, so on and so forth. These are the activities that the LEG will be engaged in the year 2023, 2024. Next slide, please. I think it is the last one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mokwena, of course, the LEG member, for providing such rich information of what we are doing as a LEG, of course, in supporting the LDC, capturing various elements. So, ladies and gentlemen, so at this juncture, we'll try to pick up some quick questions, burning ones, just 2 questions to the panelists. So, Chair, very sorry for that. If they have any questions also to you, they can direct that to you or to Mokwena. 2 questions, please. So if you want to take the floor, you can just raise your hand and then we can pass the mic to you. No icebreaker? Okay, we have one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair of the LEG, and thank you, the Secretariat, for organizing this meeting to enable us discuss and also share our issues with this meeting. I thank the LEG for the efforts that they have been doing to support the LDCs, especially when I look back from the NAPA process, now the NAPC process. And I would also like to congratulate the chair of the LDC for the guiding and enlightening presentation that she made, expressing the challenges and the interests of LDCs. I see the LEG is championing the NAPC process and supporting the LDCs. And I was particularly attracted by your intervention in supporting parties in the development of proposals under the NAPS and also in the NAPS implementation. I want to link this to the constituency where I belong. That's the technology. I think within the NAPS, technology is very critical and very important. So there's a possibility of identifying NAPS proposals that require or are linked to technology. So I would employ chair of the leg to find a way of linking with the CTCN and see how we can strengthen and enhance the capacity of the LDCs in developing proposals for submission, since we all submit to the same destination, the GCF, Adaptation Fund, and then also to the GF. So there could be a possibility, because the issue of capacity building in project proposal has been prominent both in technology sphere and now generally within the LDCs. How do we strengthen our efforts to build the capacity of the LDCs, not only to write adaptation proposal, but linking it with other areas like technology, capacity building, so that really we help the LDCs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred, for that. So we'll respond later. So take the second, please, when make your intervention, your name, and then the country you're coming from. We have one here, Seraphim, please.
Thank you, Chair, for according me this opportunity to speak on behalf of Malawi. I just wanted to follow up on the issue of the data initiative, climate data initiative. It has been mentioned that this is being done. So I just wanted to find out how far have we gone with it, and has trainings been done so that countries can access the data in the process of developing their NAPs. I hope this is clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll close the question session now. And I'll quickly turn to Mokoena. I think most of the questions is for Mokoena. The chair of the LDC is fine. So Mokoena, please, you can just respond to the data initiative, and then the one from Freddie, then I will come in. Mokoena, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, my friend Clement, for the question. Actually, this initiative is almost done, but they haven't been yet trainings that have been conducted for countries to be able to go through the process. And we are hoping that such trainings will be conducted as soon as possible. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So, to Freddie, thank you very much for that questions. And we now see, of course, realize how important technology is when it comes to different spheres, be it mitigation and adaptation. I think even during our last leg meeting, we were trying to see how we can also try to link those elements within, because as a leg, we'll be working with also different consistent bodies. So it's something, of course, that we have on our list, on the different menus we have for the leg. So it's well noted, and this is something we'll try to pursue, and then also to engage, I think, with the LDCs countries, and then maybe in the near future to see how there could be a kind of a direct approach with the CTCN, while also exploring the other consistent body. So thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. So Chair, you remain with me here, please. And of course, Mokoena, you can, of course, now join the others. Can we give them a round of applause, please? At this point, I just want to, now we are in the sessions to get reflections from the financial mechanism. We know that when it comes to formulation and implementation of NAPs, you need money. It's very critical, the funding agency. So we have in our midst representative from the GCF, the GEF, and then the Adaptation Fund. So I want to call on them to join us, to join me on this, of course, panel. Firstly, want to call on Miss Nolanha Zindela from the GCF, please. Okay, I hope I pronounced very well. Okay, yeah, I need an assistance here. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then we need, can Doji from the Jeff join us also, please? Doji. And then Miss Sylvia from Adaptation Fund, please. So many thanks for joining me, and of course I'm the chair of the LDC on this panel. So colleagues, we are now on the sessions to get presentation from the funding mechanisms. So firstly, it is my pleasure to welcome the Deputy Director and the Head of Programming, and Ms. Zindela, of course, to make a presentation on behalf of GCF. You have the floor, please.
With you. I will start off by introducing myself because I know a lot of you do not know me. I'm Zindela, the Deputy Director and Head of Programming at the GCF. So I recently joined and I took over from a colleague you knew, Cliff. And would like to greet my panelists here, the leg chair, the chairperson of the LDC group. My presentation really is to highlight to you what the GCF, if we can proceed to the next slide. In terms of our portfolio, a lot goes to the LDCs, and in terms of what's committed, 12 billion, 3.4 is dollars, of course. 3.4 is for LDCs, and 7.2 is on co-financing, and 8.6 is GCF's own financing. So in terms of projects, we have 89 projects, 14 of which are multi-regional, and of the 89, the 80 is under implementation. In terms of our portfolio focus, you will see that the LDC and the seeds and African states, in line with our prioritization of most at-need countries, take about 65% of GCF financing, and then the other 35% goes to middle-income countries. Next. Our portfolio in LDCs, you'll appreciate the 50-50 split in terms of mitigation and adaptation in GCF financing. And here, 59% of our financing to LDCs goes to adaptation, precisely for the reasons that the chair and Mr. Mkwena and the LDC chair highlighted earlier, given the need to adapt for LDCs. And then in terms of mitigation, we are at 41%. But also in nominal terms, you will see that we are not doing very badly in terms of the split between mitigation and adaptation. In terms of readiness, which I understand is a very interesting topic, we have a total number of 197 readiness grants approved to date. And then of these, the total value going to LDC is 152.4. And the total number of grants dispersed is 169. And the value of readiness grants dispersed so far of the 152 is 83.9 million. Now coming to adaptation planning for LDCs, excuse me, we have about 68.48 million approved for LDCs in terms of adaptation financing. And if you look at the table there, you will see, if we, for instance, focus on 2023, that 44 proposals were submitted, 30 of which were approved, 26 are dispersed already, and then there are about 5 LDCs from whom we've not received proposals so far. So we continue to encourage those LDCs to submit. Next. Now, we thought we should use this opportunity to update you on the policy approach and where we are in terms of improving access and simplification of our processes so that we are able to respond to you with speed, but also you are able to access the much needed financing for adaptation. We've put there the board reference and the instrument that we are exploring in terms of simplifying. The first one, for instance, on PSAA, this is to explore how possible it is to look at alternative modalities for accreditation. And of course, we are trying to operationalize a simplified approval process SAP so that we respond better and faster. And of course, we are at the point where we are revising the readiness and preparatory support, proposing a number of new modalities to make things easier. And we've had consultations with you on this. So this is work that's ongoing with the absolute aim of ensuring that we respond better and faster to your needs. In terms of cooperation with LEC and looking ahead, we have a very strong and established relationship between the two secretariats. And at some point I felt Mr. Mkwena was covering the GCF presentation. That already tells you the linkages. And we have regular engagements. And of course, even in this year and going ahead, we're looking forward to follow-up support in ideation and developing and supporting further NAP workshops. And also we're developing a number of guidelines on NAP implementation so that it's easier beyond just getting these approval. I've spoken to the readiness strategy review, but also we are heading towards GCF to 2024 to 2027. So that is where we are, and we are in the replenishment cycle. The donor community has been very supportive, so that enables us to respond even better in the coming cycle. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zindela. So I now request Doji to deliver, of course, his updates from the Jeff.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good to see both chairs up here. My name is Dorji. I'm from Jeff Secretariat, working with adaptation team. Thank you for this opportunity to provide what LDCF has done in terms of support to LDCs over last 6 months or so. Just to set the context, next please. I wanted to build upon what my colleague from GCF has said. We actually are in the first year of 4 year of our implementation cycle. It's called GF8 period. And to launch into some of the progress that we have made in implementation, I wanted to just briefly highlight what's in there for all of us as LDCs in the strategy. Next, please. So just to highlight, the strategy actually covers a number of key things that's necessary for us to do adaptations. As Madam Chair, you mentioned that number of things that we need to be taken care in terms of using science and having all sections of the society engaged in the process of adaptation implementation. Next, please. So I think the themes kind of is very relevant to what is very dear to LDC. So these are the major themes that we'll be continuing to invest for next 3 years. Next, please. And also, we are trying to look at how to transform adaptation outcomes, and we believe that there are 3 different areas to make it happen, and scaling up finance, ways to work with the private sector, and of course, fostering the ownership and all of the society approach. All of us, actually, all of these priority areas would bring us to obtaining some form of transformation. Next, please. And I mean, you know already that in this current phase of GF period, LDCs are allocated double of what we used to be considered during GF7 period. So each of LDCs are now going to receive $20 million per country. Next, please. And this is where I wanted to dedicate a little bit, couple of minutes to explain. Within the new strategy also, there are 3 dedicated programs But I want to touch briefly on the program number 2, which is on outreach and capacity support for LDCs for planning and programming. I think this is relevant in the context of what's being discussed here, as I've heard the intervention from my good colleagues, Fred, as well as Lake Chair yourself. Next, please. So in terms of the outreach and capacity building, I wanted to update everyone here that we have had a very successful 2 sub-regional workshops covering 22 LDCs, and these workshops are actually being delivered in very, very close collaboration with LDC Chair Madeline here, who was, heavily involved from conceptualization to the implementations and in terms of delivery of the substance as well. And we have 2 workshops, one in Senegal where 17 LDCs, Francophone LDCs, attended, and we also had one in Maputo. We had Lusophone as well as the Southern African countries LDCs attended, including Mokina. He couldn't make it, but we had a very strong representations from South, Southern African constituencies as well in terms of the workshop. I wanted to just make it very clear that we have been very sensitive to what is needed to be done in terms of adaptations. So that's why the kind of participants who attending the workshop includes not just the chief operational focal points and climate focal points. We went outside and we got adaptation experts attending, and we actually received a very useful inputs. And also we had CSOs and youth also participating in those workshops. And one of the primary objectives, the simple objectives for us, is that we hope that we wanted to provide necessary tools and skills and informations that we in LDCs lacked in order to write a good proposal or translating what is there in your adaptation priorities into projects. So we recognize that, and it's on that context that we had this very useful workshop, and we actually are planning in next 6 or so months. Both Madeline and ourselves will be reaching out to remaining LDCs to be able to conclude this work very successfully, because what we wanted to do at the end of the day is we are doubling what is available in terms of LDCF to LDCs. And we wanted to make sure that the money is being put to good use by yourself. And we wanted you to draw your own priorities based on NAPs and other national documents. But at the end of the day, we want you to have all the tools and informations to convert those plans into projects, not just for LDCF. You could use it for other climate funds as well. And I think at a number of workshops, especially the Senegal workshop, we actually heard a very very, very insightful remarks from Lake Chair yourself, and we were actually very happy to have that driving this process forward. Next, please. My final slides, yes, I think this is the final slide, is that, as I mentioned, we are on the first year of implementing GF8 adaptation strategy, and we have council meeting coming up at the end of this month. And we have received 5 proposals. Those were from Bhutan, Djibouti, Comoros, Zambia, and then there's one global support project. I wanted to mention here that we have no projects that's waiting for funding. Every project that we have received are technically cleared and is going to the councils. And I have a little bit color-coded differently in terms of Bhutan and Djibouti. If you look at the slides, those are the 2 countries. They are accessing the full allocated $20 million. And I wanted to request all LDCs, please come forward with the proposals. We are open for business. We want to help you, but you got to submit the proposals. And let's work together how to do this. Let's work together through workshops how to write the good proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doji, for providing updates from the GEF. And now invite Ms. Sylvia to provide updates from the Adaptation Fund.
Thank you, and this is an absolute pleasure to be sitting, especially with the 2 chair, and in the team spirit of complementarity with all the other funds. I am Silvia Mancini. I'm the Country and Partnership Unit team leader, and I work for the Adaptation Fund. And we have a mandate. We can go for the first slide. So we have a mandate to fund concrete adaptation project with tangible results on the ground. And we have been pioneering direct access and enhanced direct access. And the fund has grown rapidly to $1 billion. And next slide. We now are under the current medium-term strategy up to 2027. And then you can see it's, the strategy is mainly focused on action, innovation, and learning and sharing. And there are very important cross-cutting themes. And I would like just to focus on the promote locally based and locally led adaptation. And also, among the others, because it was mentioned before, also advance gender equality. Now, for time, I'm not going to read all the cross-cutting themes, but they're very relevant to this discussion. So we can move to the next slide. What important to keep in mind in general is that we fund concrete adaptation activity in the most vulnerable community. We don't have prescribed sectors or approaches because the Adaptation Fund works according to country-driven approaches. We finance the full cost of adaptation for the moment. Probably in future, co-financing is going to also be part of the Adaptation Fund. 50% of the portfolio is for direct access, and the country allocation is 20 million allocation per country, and the possibility of 2 national implementing entities to access for accreditation. We can move to the next slide. Support for NAPS implementation is really a core of the Adaptation Fund in terms of funding, in terms of direct access, in terms of importance for the vulnerable community and enhancing resilience. So we feel very much in line with the vision that was presented before by the LAG member. And we have, in the fund, we pay particular attention to NAPS and NDC in the programming process, because, of course, the program should always be developed in the way they take into account NAPS and NDC when they exist. Countries can choose their priority sector in line with the NAPS and NDC. There are different ways, different mechanisms to access accreditation from national, having a national implementing entities, but also regional or going through a multilateral implementing entity. Supporting for learning, innovation, and scaling up to support, again, it's, we always, as you saw, innovation is part of one of the pillars of the MTS of the Adaptation Fund, so we always encourage the testing of new and emerging adaptation solutions for inclusion in NAPS and in NDC. We can move to the next slide. The portfolio of accredited implementing entities, it's very important to notice that out of the 55 implementing entities, 10 are national implementing entities, and also 7 are regional implementing entities from the LDC. So the first is 10 from the LDC, 7 NIEs from SEEDS, and 7 RIEs from the LDC. So the center of attention is definitely, from the perspective of the Adaptation Fund, is definitely on LDCs and SEEDS. We can move to the next slide. We also, in terms of projects and program, you can see the 41 projects in LDCs and 24 in SEEDS. So almost 50%, I would say, 48% of total portfolio is focused on LDC and SEEDS, and 33% of our portfolio is in LDCs for a total of 304 million. Move to the next slide. Here we have a different adaptation fund funding windows, most of which are open to accredited entities, but there are also, especially in the area of innovation, there are also parts that are open also to non-accredited entities. And I'm here joined by my colleagues, Bianca Kretschmer and Alisa Gomez. And if you want to have additional information about these funding windows, we're here these days, so we can have bilateral conversation. So we can move to the next slide. As I said, we're very happy to really have had experience of the past 15 years, especially of the past 10 years, to have a very important complementarity, operational linkages with the other funds in terms of accreditation, vice versa, eligibility from the IF and the GCF, but also important scale-up framework from the IF, GCF, and others. And we can move to the next slide. As I said, promoting locally led adaptation is definitely one of the key elements of interest for the LDC, but also for interest of the adaptation fund. And there are some e-learning tools that have been developed lately for the LLA, but also the board will make more funding available for LLA. So we are very pleased to continue this conversation and continue the focus on vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for the updates. And then thanks to the panelists from the funding agencies for the updates. So I think we are not doing well with time, but nonetheless, we can still pick some questions because this is very much critical when it comes to funding. So with that, I'll request from the floor for 3 questions. Please, your name, where you're coming from, or your organizations, and then please make the questions very quick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Medin Fisaha from Ethiopia. So as part of the NAP GCF Readiness Project, we have prepared more than 5 concept notes, and these concept notes were also presented in the workshop of Lakes and Chile. So what's missing is submitting these concept notes to the GCF. So I just wanted to ask LEC and also the GCF if there is any technical support that you can provide to countries to make these concept notes ready up to the standard of the GCF, meeting the GCF investment criteria. And the other suggestion is for the upcoming Lakes workshop, it would be good if you can have a differentiated kind of approach, in the sense that some of the countries are still writing or developing concept notes, and some of them have already concept notes. So if there is a differentiated approach, then countries like Ethiopia can benefit in submitting the concept notes to the GCF and others, because preparing concept notes and not submitting it does not make sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and then we have one in front.
Thank you very much. So my name is Lydia. I'm from Switzerland, and I'm the contact point for adaptation from Yango, the youth constituency of the UNFCCC. So first of all, I would like to congratulate the LEG for their engagement at the NAP Expo and for their for them to champion gender inclusion. And I wanted to ask our panelists. So most of the adaptation, local-led adaptation in the LDCs are actually youth-led. So I was just wondering how much youth-led project you are supporting in your portfolio. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We have one in front. I think we now have 4, so I don't know. Anyway, we can pick one here first, and then we'll come to you later, Fred, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Britta Horstmann. I'm a member of the Adaptation Committee, and thank you for these very good overview presentations. With a view to the DGA and the GST that is underway, I would be interested in your views on what would be your proposals to parties, donors, but also the constituted bodies on next steps and priority action needed in order to enhance action and support. And in that regard, also one information point maybe that we are having or planning a dialogue on progress made, including the capacity gaps in enhancing adaptation funding. So we couldn't get a time slot at the SBs, but I think that with your support, maybe also that dialogue might be a next good opportunity to discuss related next steps and priority gaps, priority action needed in order to close the capacity gaps. Thanks again for the good presentations.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, we can take that one quickly and then we close. It's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to come back on this one because I think it's an interesting area. And as a member of LDCs, we have been experiencing a lot of challenges. I'm happy for the GCF Adaptation Fund and the GEF to be here. And I hope we can work together to address the challenges because I'm from the Climate Technology Center Network. And I think with the GEF, the GCF, and the Adaptation Fund, we can move together to address the challenges faced by LDCs. One of the challenges that we've had in the corridor is the complexity and the length of the procedure provided by the GCF in accessing the funding from them. And I think the presenter mentioned that they are trying to look at the simplifying the process. I think it should not be in words. If we can come up with a simplified guideline that the LDCs can use to access these funds, that would really help. Because this has been a call. We've had complaints. It is there. Then the other issue with the GEF, I'm happy to hear about the training program on a project or in proposal writing. It's a welcome move. But let's see how this can be formalized. Can we have a deliberate program for this training, not ad hoc? Let us have it maybe at regional level, considering the variations in languages. Because the Francophone, the Lusophone, the Anglophone. And I find that if we could move together and bring all other stakeholders on board and train the specific people from each of these regions or countries, they can later on also replicate or share the knowledge they've got and also intensify the project proposal writing within the region. They can even consult with each other, and then it can be very sustainable. So really, let's work on how to make this a formal program, and then implement it together with other stakeholders, like the citizen may be of interest, may have interest in participating in this. Adaptation Fund. Oh, the LDCs have got constraints in getting funds for technology. Do you have any guidance you can give the LDCs here in how they can develop proposals related to technology and benefit from the Adaptation Fund? We are seeking your guideline. I'm talking this because these have been challenges presented in various meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred. So back to our panelists for quick reflections.
Okay. The proposal writing and how do we make sure that we provide support to ensure that the proposals you write meet the GCF investment criteria, as well as that they will go through when they come to GCF. I think before we even talk to proposals, the approach that from GCF we find very useful is that we engage from the ideation stage. Because if we brainstorm with you from the ideas, then as we build the idea to a proposal, to a concept, then we are already working, we are of the same mind. What has happened is that countries develop concept notes prior to engaging the GCF, and by the time we deploy our project development technical assistance, it's a lot of work, reviewing that proposal and making it work towards the GCF's investment criteria. So we need to use very strategically the country programming missions and the country programming calls, as well as the regional dialogues, to work from the idea stage. By the time you have a concept note that needs to be reworked, the process takes even longer. But from the GCF side, we have a pool of consultants that can help to develop projects. In terms of, I felt the rest of the questions were about the complexity of GCF processes. I think this is very clear. It's feedback we continue to give to the board so that we are able to get authorization to relax some of these stringent requirements, and we are piloting some of the innovations like the simplified approval process. With these processes, we'll be able to see, and going into GCF2, the learning that we've gone through in GCF1, we'll be able to apply the lessons and deliver better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Quickly, Doji.
Thank you very much. And I think there are 2 points that I wanted to react to. One from my younger colleagues. I think, I was rushing through the strategy and never really got good time to explain. I just wanted to assure you that the adaptation strategy that we are implementing right now is actually influenced by many other scientific reports, including UNICEF report on the climate crisis. The report is called "Climate Crisis is a Child's Right." Child's rights, and those kind of reports were very useful for us in designing the strategy, and that's how various priority areas reflects on how to really respond to all these gender issues, as well as the intergenerational equity issues that's inflicting upon us. Thank you very much, my colleague Fred from CTCN. I think with permission of Madam Chair here, I think what we have done right now in terms of providing this targeted workshop is an hand-holding, immediate, rapid, short-term hand-holding exercise. That's how we see it. In the larger sleeve, what we have is we're actually designing, of course, with LDC group, because this is not something that Jeff or LDC Secretariat can handle this. This is something that we need inputs and stakeholder engagement from all important stakeholders in this process. So we're actually designing something called thematic clinics, and this is going to be the dedicated program 2.01, or second version of building up from the current hand-holding workshop that we have started. So our whole idea is to basically make sure that we build and we help from the systemic perspective, and not just a project-based, workshop-based kind of activities. We wanted to make sure that there is a sustainability in our interventions, there is durability in intervention, and there is obviously a sustained capacity within the LDCs to be able to write proposals, not just for, as I mentioned, not just for Jeff, many other climate funds as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doji. Sylvia, please.
Yes, thank you. I'll start from the question on the technology. We have an ongoing partnership with CTCN in that respect. Also, in the innovation pillar, definitely technology is an extremely important element. And of course, when we're talking about innovation, it's also important to see the need for social innovation, not only hard core innovation. But in terms of access to funding, because I would like to, group a number of questions, very important questions, on really access to funding. We see the efforts from the mechanisms here to really progress and make important progress on simplifying the mechanism to access funding. And I can guarantee to you that this is definitely one of the key elements, not only at the level of all the funds, but also in terms from the adaptation fund. We have seen how that has been a core. We have probably matured this a bit of a longer experience in terms of accreditation, for example, and we have a number of streamlined accreditation processes or, as I said, fast-track processes with the GCF, but not only there, also in terms of the readiness, trying to be really relevant for the progress on having proposals that are immediately fundable. So I think there is that element, and we have been trying to have also the knowledge management in parallel in terms of learning from those barriers that you were mentioning, language being one of those barriers, but really having the knowledge management guiding us in trying to fund responses that try to have a very effective and responsive access to funding. And I think the fact that most of our projects are, sorry, in LDC and seeds, and we are a country-driven fund, of course, the response comes from the countries, and we learn very much from countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, and then thanks to the panelists. I think this is very interesting, discussing funding. So a round of applause for them, please. So we have come now to the end of this particular session. We, of course, we've passed the time limit, but nonetheless, we are requesting that maybe we can just use 10 more minutes to complete the session. So we do acknowledge the comments from online. And of course, UNDP have just sent a message that they are ready to support countries to advance their proposal, but it has to be done, I think, in a formal, of course, way. So all the comments here, if you've not responded to them, we can engage bilaterally. So thank you very much. So you can have your seat. Yeah. Yes. So quickly, we now go to the country interventions. We have 3 countries, Kiribati, Laos, and Uganda. We'll just try to just get like 2 quick reflection from them, please. 2 minutes reflection from the countries, please. Uganda, please, quickly. Laos and Kiribati, please. Okay, yeah, no, yeah. So start with the presentation from Kiribati. Mr. Kirata, you have the floor, please. 2 minutes, please.
Hey.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Mary, and good morning to you all. My presentation will be based on the Kiribati NAP, but for the sake of the time, I will speak more on priorities and challenges we face in our NAP. Next slide, please. This is just to reflect what we have done in terms of the NAP cycle. So we have conducted vulnerability assessments in 16 outer islands out of the 23 total islands of Kiribati. From there, we have developed our NAP comprising of 12 strategies, priorities, and under these 12 strategies, there are more than 600 activities in our NAP. For the implementation phase, it may take longer than the assessment and development process, of course, because the implementation of our NAP is multi-sectoral approach, where each activity has leading agencies, and these agencies utilize their own finance, human resource, to execute the activities while also implementing their sector-specific development goals. And so when we have conducted a progress reporting, which is a component of the MEL, we have learned that 38% of the NAP activities need further review. 53% are in the pipeline, just started, and some of still ongoing, and only 9% have completed. Next slide, please. So these are the priorities outlined in our NAP. Strategy 1 is more on enhancing policies and legislation to smoothen the NAP implementation and overarching efforts on climate change. The next strategy move entails giving utmost importance to the management and dissemination of data information. Strategy 3 is to mainstream climate change all over sectors, NGOs, private sectors, and churches, faith-based organizations. Strategy 4 highlights a highly effective approach to tackle water and food security comprehensively by unifying and harmonizing the endeavors of individuals and organizations working in these fields. Strategy 5 is focused on enhancing healthcare systems to tackle the health consequences of climate change, which is a crucial priority that demands urgent attention in Kiribati. Under Strategy 6, we prioritize the advancement of trustworthy infrastructure and efficient land management. Next slide, please. So the Strategy 7 will prioritize education and training initiatives with a particular emphasis on integrating climate change awareness into the curriculum and syllabus. Additionally, we provide pieces of training and community consultation to support these efforts. So these priorities, just outline them to make sure that just to see the feasibility if it's falls within the climate finance entity's priorities. And yeah, so I just have to move to the challenges and for the implementation. Now that we are in the implementation phase, and that I've mentioned that the challenges that we face is limited financial resources. Given our fragile economy, we lack the financial capacity to expedite the implementation of our NAP. The progress we have made thus far with the 9% is largely due to external funding support from our partners. It is imperative that we have to invest more in strengthening our climate finance division to enable them to secure funding to our NAP implementation. And at the same time, explore our trusted partners like LEC and others to assist in developing proposals for our NAP implementation. The second one is, as with many other less developed countries, Kiribati faces a shortage of human resources, particularly in the form of experts in technical personnel to carry out the NAP implementation. Additionally, the workload required to implement sector-specific priorities and NAP activities is overwhelming, and this is where technical assistance is needed from partners. One of the challenges we encountered in implementing NAP is the limited technology and transfer available. This highlights the needs for innovative and context-specific technology that is suitable for use in Kiribati. And lastly, climate risks are becoming a major obstacle in the implementing of our NAP. This is very concerning for us, as any further delay in our implementation could add on to our already increasing vulnerability to multiple climate risks. For that, I thank you for your time and support. Thanks.
Thank you very much, at least for speaking and providing those updates within the time limit. I think it's well captured, and it's our view that most of the challenges you've already highlighted. Our partners here, we look into it, and of course from the Lagos we'll try to look into most of the things you've already presented. Thank you very much. So next is quickly to Laos, to Mr. Tava. You have the floor, please. 3 minutes.
Thank you, and good morning once again. And thank you also the LEC and the Secretariat for inviting us to present some of the implementation of climate change adaptation in Laos PDR. So this presentation, I will try to summarize the implementation and what we have done and the challenge we are facing right now. Yes. So the adaptation priority for us, this summary from the third national communication and also the national strategy and also the NDC. So we come up with we are facing the data sharing among the ministry or even the sectors. So why? Because climate change data sharing is really important for the concept note preparing for the projects. And in terms of transfer modern of technology for early warning system to prevent the climate change impact. And also the institutional strengthening the human resource. So this is where it comes from, the NAP project that helping us to elaborate the awareness basing on adaptation and come up with the sector's plan and action plan for to combat with climate change. And in terms of the education on climate change, for us, we also have the Monterey, especially our department. We also have the MOU with the university to come up with some subjects on the climate change, and also the faculty of create the faculty of the national environment in the universities. Yes. So these are some examples that we are developed the policy since starting from 2000s, and the climate change has been mainstream to the NSEDP since number 7, and the climate change is also aligned with the national strategy and national green growth strategy and up to 2030. And we are now also develop the LT list and also develop the national adaptation plan. The need for the implementation of adaptation that come up and summarize with the we are facing the human resource and also the financial resource, and the unclear of specific action plan from the sectoral areas. That's why where the NAP came from, to helping them to unlock the action plan for their adaptations, and also the assessment or evaluation of implementation of the climate change adaptation in their sectors. For example, we are now updating the NDC, the NDC, and we are facing that the implementation, especially on adaptation part, is really difficult to assessment and also to report. And also the M&E system for the especially on climate change adaptation among sectors and also the provincial level. That's why this also to come up with the NAP project that we are helping to develop the system, how to report from the ground for provincial level to the central level, especially for the focal point like Monterey, and report to UNFCCC Secretariat. And for the approach in Lao PDR adaptation priority, we come up with mostly with the mainstreaming climate change adaptation into sectoral climate resilience for example, agriculture, forestry, water, transport, and health energy. So besides from that, we also use the potential from the GCF readiness program that we received 3 million to apply to make the sectoral NAP plan for the agriculture, forestry, water, and transport. So we also pick up the health sector that they are already finished with the HNAP. So after they finish the HNAP, they also come up with they need the action plan. Therefore, the CHEF and children come in and helping them to develop the concept note to get some funding from GCF. So the concept note is already submitted to the GCF, and the amount is almost $25 million. This is why where example why it's so important to have the NAP for the sectors. Yes. So these are some examples that we are implementing just the pilot project that we are applying, because Lao PDR is also the landlocked country. That's why we are trying to apply the nature-based solution, also the ecosystem-based solution in the 6 province cities. And also these 6 cities we pick up from our report that we have been done, the first report on vulnerability assessment. They come up the 10 provinces that most vulnerable. This is aligned with the project concept note. Yes. For the concept idea project that we had learned from the NAP writing workshop from supporting from Lake scene in the Cambodia, we also come up with the idea concept, and now we are developing and also make the consultation with the NDA and also the stakeholders, climate resilient and the provincial level to come up with some data. And we also trying to get the support from the partner, for example, the UNEP or UN Habitat or UNDP to help us to develop the concept note after we get the concept idea already. And Yes. And lastly, our NAP in Lao PDR, we are recently implementing the formulating the NAP, and we are planning to complete by the end of 2024. Therefore, the challenge and the need for us, and especially for the lake, may help us how to implement the plan after we success or after we complete the NAP by the end of 2024 for Lao PDR. Yes, this is for the summary of presentation of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much from Laos for the presentation. Next to Uganda. Bob, please.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. It's always challenging to speak last. My name is Bob Natif. I wear so many hats, but for this meeting, I think I'll just say two things. I'm a friend to the leg members and the leg chair. I'm a friend to the adaptation community. But the last time I attempted to become a leg member, these colleagues kicked me out. But that's a joke. So, but I'm also happy to note that the community is growing, actually, compared to what it was last year. I think the constituency is growing big, and thanks so much for the leg members and the chair and the UNFCCC for a job well done. I hope next year it will even be bigger than this. So for us on our part, I'm just going to do just a summary discussion on what I've heard from everybody speaking, but also bringing Uganda's experience. So for us, climate change is a challenge of managing risks on a daily. Risks for people, risks for infrastructure, risks for freshwater resources, risks for ecosystems, and everything else that we do bound around this, and any step taken to build resilience actually is a very welcome idea. But why and how should we do this, for example, you may ask? First, we need to assess that's known on one part, but also what's not known within the scientific and the development body of knowledge. To the extent, if you like, to find out who's vulnerable to what and who is susceptible to harm and why. Arguably, this is what, as LDCs, you've heard from the LDC chair to the leg chair to every member in the room. This is what we've attempted to do for the last so many years in trying in all our different spaces as LDCs by formulating the NAPAs. Those of you that have grown into this as myself, NAPAs were something that we did way back in 2007, so you can see I'm growing very old into this process, up to the NAPs where we are now, struggling into how do we then ensure that we come up with transformative activities that will lead us to where we want to go. In this instance, we don't only talk about short-term interventions, but I think also transformative activities that want to the big picture of what resilience is. So within all this, I always argue that the LDCs have made a deliberate attempt to set up frameworks that point towards building resilience, at least on paper, again, if you like, but also to some extent, the impact, in my view, I think is statistically significant. As an example, again, moving from the short and medium actions to transformative actions in the NAPs, and then set a space on integration of these into our different development plans, working with the various financing mechanisms that there are to try and support us to implement the plans and so on and so forth. So what we should be preoccupied with ourselves within this discussion is what is lacking in all the different spaces that we occupy. And I'll pose two questions that maybe we may have to reflect on as we get along. First is, have the LDCs, for example, done enough in voicing concerns about our adaptation priorities and the wins that come, for example, with all the processes that we've undertaken over the years? We've eloquently heard, for example, there's a GGA process. How are we taking advantage of that to ensure we reflect all these concerns within this pipeline of actions that there are? And if we've not done enough, or if we've done enough, what is it that we can do differently? In contrast, since there are also so many financing mechanisms here, is for example, the GCF or the Adaptation Fund or the GEF and any other funding mechanisms that there are fit for purpose. Fit for purpose, I mean, are they fitting into the needs that we've tried to come up with? And is it also hell-bent towards ensuring that despite the challenges that we have, there's an upfront effort to ensure that we try to access all the financial resources as they are. So the question is, what is really lacking? I think at the back of our minds is what we should be reflecting on. I'll argue, for example, the LDCF or any other financing mechanisms as we know them have been established under the auspices of the UNFCCC to identify and help us prioritize different actions. And once we do that right, then it will have the potential to contribute to the challenges that the LDCs are faced with. However, I find the existing mechanisms, for example, either have neither sufficient financial resources or the numbers that they need to have to address the adaptation needs that the LDCs have. My good sister Zindela talked about the simplified approval process. I think I've heard about the simplified approval process for 3 or 4 years ago. I think now the thing should be, how then do we ensure that all this, for example, comes to fruition to allow us advance these actions that we've undertaken. So I can see being reminded to close, but just 1.5 minutes. I think in terms of significance, the resources, just an example, are required, but also capacity on one hand for us to ensure that we advance this. So the international community, I think, needs to provide the further funding through the different mechanisms as they are. And I can confidently say, even with this, we've come up with further innovative approaches. For example, the local option through the UNCDF, adaptation benefits, and so on and so forth. But we also need to put our best foot forward as LDCs to tap into these available resources and expertise. Why do I say that? Because policy recommendations can't be effective where there isn't any concrete action on the ground. So, and there's an African proverb which loosely translates, when you focus your eyes on the neighbors, you miss the rainbow. So maybe perhaps we are focusing so much on the neighbor and missing the rainbow. But we need generally to strengthen coordination and ambition. And by ambition, to me, is not about, for example, Uganda, for instance, climbing the adaptation ladder faster than, say, Senegal or Sierra Leone or Congo. No. It is true ambition, for me, comes from the conviction and the courage to see that the grand vision that we hold through all this as LDCs go through to completion. And that's why we have the leg in place. Our journeys may be singular, I think, but we have a common destination. With that, I'd like to thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for them. I think it's getting very interesting. But we don't want to be kicked out of this place because we've exhausted our time. But nonetheless, we have just the last agenda item. There's going to be an oral interventions because under the leg we have our technical working groups. So we want to call on our colleague Alvin from UNEP to provide some quick reflection. Alvin, please.
No, thank you, the chair, both LDC and the leg chairs. Definitely a pleasure for UNEP, but also speak on behalf of other sister UN agencies, UNDP, to be part of the NEP technical working groups. So very briefly, just touching on what UNEP is doing in terms of NEP, we are supporting 22 national adaptation plans, of which 9 are in LDCs. They're being implemented. In addition, we are also supporting 4 LDCs develop their NEP proposals. We do have a portfolio of 70 plus projects in 50 countries, a vast majority of this being in LDCs, looking at adaptation priorities that have been identified in NAP, particularly agriculture, water, urban areas, and coasts, and this remains some of the key focus. Just circling back in terms of the some of the key priorities and the barriers that have been identified, I do feel that the NAP technical working groups do provide that space to really unpack some of the barriers. So UNEP, for example, we've joined 3 subgroups that were launched at COP27. We are part of the NAP implementation, the NAP tracking, and the NAP stakeholders, and we're looking to engage in these subgroups. I do feel that these subgroups do provide a good opportunity to address some of the barriers towards accessing finance, and just reflecting on what Kiribati had said. For example, in terms of access to climate finance, what does it mean for Jeff and GCF proposals? For example, how do we tease out paradigm shifting in a context of Kiribati in Mauritania? And these subgroups do provide that space in terms of catalyzing implementation. We have contributed to the past NEP Right workshops, and we look forward to working with countries to further develop their project concepts, and noting that many readiness projects through GCF adaptation funds are in place, and we'd encourage that the concept notes that are being developed are actually brought to these write-up workshops. And of course, speaking on behalf of UNEP, we look forward to being part of the write-up workshops. But these write-up workshops, and I feel that one of the barriers that was identified was in terms of matching agencies with the right type of project to provide the technical assistance for implementation, but also further developing. And I think that the engagement with LEG in this write-up workshop helps address some of those barriers. The NAP expos have definitely also provided a really good avenue in terms of exchanging lessons, and we remain committed to this proposed to the future NAP expos in terms of leading some of the technical sessions. The NAP expos, where we've supported participants, have also provided countries the opportunity to exchange some best practices. So just hearing in terms of a barrier around access to climate finance, and another one that we've frequently heard in the Global Goals workshop that concluded yesterday was how do we enable local partners access funds? And a good example from Nepal is around locally led approaches and local NEP priorities that have allowed local partners to actually access funds. So these avenues and these expos do provide good avenues for exchanging lessons. Lastly, we're about to publish a policy brief in terms of key lessons from NAP, and we hope that this will be useful to LEG. And I'll stop over here. Thank you.
Thank you, because the microphones will go off quick, very shortly from now. But just that as we conclude, I just want to recognize the presence of LEG members that's in the room. Maybe you can stand up quickly. LEG members, Richard, okay, yeah. Franz, Budi, and others, yeah? Okay. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this very important program with rich information. So I think we would have wished to continue, but because of time, we'll close for here now. So I wish you all the very best in the engagement. And from the LEG, we'll continue engagement in this particular regards going forward. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.